I bought this house for my daughter to live in a year ago, and one of the big issues with the house is in the master bedroom, it's got a sloping floor because the foundation in the back corner had sunken down. When I measure up to the level point, it's off by about 3¼ inches, which is a huge drop over 10 feet. What I want to do is lift up the hardwood flooring, and then I can take these pieces and use them to do some repairs around the rest of the house. So I'm drilling some holes in one end and some holes in the other end of the board, and then I'll run my circular saw to cut out the piece so that I can lift it out. And then with the rest of the tongue and groove pieces, it should be fairly easy to pry them out. But after I took out this first piece, I realized that the flooring was only 1/4 inch thick rather than the 3/4 inch that I was expecting. And so there was no way that I was going to be able to get this out and reuse it. So over the following week, I had my wife and daughter remove all of the flooring, and we just took it home and burnt it. So before I get started, I got these steel-toed work boots and a pair of pants from a company called HISEA, and I really like them, especially the pants. They're a lot more durable than denim, and they've got lots of pockets, which come in handy when I'm carrying around my tools and other things. And what I really like about them is that there's a portion of the waistband that's stretchy, so they fit really well with or without a belt. If you want to get a pair of these, I've got a 15% off coupon in the description. The subfloor is also tongue and groove, so it's going to be a little bit of a chore to get it out. I'll start by prying the shortest piece that I could find. I don't want to cut into the joists, or at least not by very much, so I'm measuring the thickness of the subfloor. And then I'm going to cut around the perimeter of the room, going as close to the edge of the wall as I can. And for the remaining pieces of the subfloor, there's very little chance I can remove these without breaking them. So I'm going to cut them down the middle to make them easier to remove. There's a lot of dust flying around, so I did eventually put on a mask. This video is very different from a lot of my other videos where I'm doing finer woodworking. But don't unsubscribe just because of this one video, because I have a lot more chessboard videos on the way. But if you like this type of content, let me know, because we have a lot more renovations to do in this house. And I'm doing another renovation project in somebody else's house as well. So comment below and let me know if you would like more of this type of content. It was not that difficult to remove the subfloor, but it was a long, tedious process. Next, I used my reciprocating saw to cut a little bit closer to the edge of the wall. I started with my circular saw because I wanted to open up the floor and see what was underneath. And as you can see here, there are some wires. So if I had started by cutting out the floor with a reciprocating saw, there's no telling what I would have damaged. I got this miter saw from Evolution Power Tools, and this is the first time I've had a miter saw that has a stand, which is great when I'm at a job site. What I really like about the saw is it's not very heavy, so it's easy to carry around from site to site. Some of my other miter saws are like 70 pounds and they're pretty awkward to carry around. So this is my go-to miter saw for work that I'm doing on site. There's a link in the description if you're interested in getting a tool like this. I've got this little block of wood and I'm using a pry bar to lift the 2x4 up to be as tight to the bottom of the old subfloor as I can. And the purpose of this 2x4 is just to pad it out so that it's away from the flooring, and then I can put in the joist. It's a pretty tight space between the joists and it's hard to get a hammer in there or a larger nail gun. So I'm using this palm nailer, which is a pretty handy tool for tight spaces. There were some remnants of knob and tube wiring nailed to the floor joists, so I had to remove some of those because they were in the way. So it was at this point in the video editing process that I realized that I was missing the entire afternoon and the most important part of this whole floor leveling process. The last thing you saw was me nailing in a 2x4 along this side, and that was not the new joist, that was just to pad it out from the edge of the flooring so that I could put in the 2x6 joist. 2x6 doesn't sound like very much, but I'm not just hanging the joist from one end to the other, I'm nailing it into the 2x12 that was existing. And I put probably 20 nails along its length, so it's actually very strong. And I raised this point up and the new sistered-in joist to be level from front to back and from side to side. And then I put in this 2x4 and just set it on top of the two joists so that it would guide my placement of the new joists as I put them in. So I was putting in each joist to be touching the bottom of this 2x4, and now you can see that it's pretty level. It's not exact, maybe I could raise it up another 1/8 of an inch, but it's pretty close. So at this point, we can resume our regular programming. This is the following weekend, and I have the recording working properly now, and I'm sistering in the remaining 3 joists. I start by screwing them in place just to get them level. and then I'll nail them in place. And this time I'm using a larger nailer. This is a framing nailer that doesn't really fit between the joists, but when I angle it up, I can still get a nail in place. This is a lot faster than the palm nailer because with a single click of the trigger, it puts the nail in rather than hammering it repeatedly like the palm nailer does. We used a pry bar on this joist to make sure that it was sitting snugly against the other joist, which was a little bit curved. And now it's time to put down the flooring. So I'm going to cut the length of the plywood so that it lands on a joist. And before I put it down, I'm using a little bit of blue tape to mark the locations of the joists so that I know where to place the screws. I'll just draw a line for each of the joists and then screw them in. And I'm putting screws in every 6 or 8 inches or so. And this is going to be really solid with no chance of the floors ever squeaking. And I'll finish up the end with a small piece that's about 18 inches wide. At the point where the plywood is going to meet the old subfloor, I have the new floor joist set a little bit high because the plywood is a little bit thinner than the old subfloor. One of those knob and tube remnants turned out not to be a remnant, and I ended up cutting a live wire, so I ran a couple of cables back to the panel and have them here tucked away for future use. And for this last row of plywood, I have to notch out the corner. This time I'm using my battery-operated circular saw, which is so convenient to use. It's quiet and it has a brake, so it stops almost instantly when you turn it off. And the same thing for the other side. I have to notch it out around the supports that are holding up what used to be a load-bearing wall. At this point, as I get closer to the front of the house, I get to a point where the old subfloor moves from being beneath the new floor to being at the same level as the new floor. So I have to cut around that to make it fit. And then I just have these last little strips to piece in. These are about 3 inches wide. So that pretty much does it for this project. We're not going to put down the hardwood flooring at this point. It'd be nice if we could, but we have some other renovations in this room that we want to do before we can put down the flooring. So over here, where we've got the transition from the old subfloor to the new subfloor, you can see there's a little bit of a gap. The old subfloor dips down in the middle, and I tried to mimic that over on this side by having the new joists a little bit lower in the middle so that the transition won't be that bad. These small pieces that I put in here, those are screwed into the old floor joists, and that's why they're lower, because this this plywood is not as thick. This is about 7/8 of an inch, and this is less than 3/4 of an inch. So I think what I'm going to do is take some wood filler and fill it in here to have a nice transition, and then we should be pretty good to lay the hardwood. So over here we're going to do two things. Three things actually. This is an old window. We're going to replace this window. We're going to take off the drywall, and we're going to put insulation in the wall. This has a large closet on the other side of the wall, but it's only accessible from the hallway. So we're going to close off that door, and we're going to put a new door here to make it a closet for the master bedroom. This is a load-bearing wall, so we'll have to be very careful. We'll have to support the joists on either side before we take out this stud and put in a proper header. Over here, we have what's currently the only bathroom in the house, and it's very small. You have to navigate around the toilet in order to get into the bathtub. So we're going to expand it out into the master bedroom. We've got about 18 inches here that we can bring the wall out. So we've already taken off some of the drywall and lath. It used to be plaster on this wall. And we're gonna, just to explore what's in here, there's no venting. There's actually an air admittance valve in the vanity, which is not really up to code. So we'll see if we can fix that as well and make it better. We're gonna bring this wall out. We'll put a pocket door in. We'll put in a new vanity, a shower, new toilet, and we're gonna move the toilet. So it's gonna be pretty cool. So that's it. Normally I would ask, would you make it? But I didn't really make anything here. But if you have a sloping bedroom floor that you need to level, I think this is not a bad method. So I gotta ask, would you do it?